Picture this: ballrooms lit by candlelight, powdered wigs towering high, and beneath layers of satin and lace, white women strapped into bizarre wireframe contraptions called panniers. But what they don't teach you in your average high school history class is why these women were suddenly so eager to exaggerate their curves. Because this wasn't just about fashion. This was about envy. This was about obsession. Scope News does a very deep dive. This was about the earliest form of a BBL, before surgery, before Instagram, and before most people were even free. They won't say it out loud. They never have. But white women, especially the aristocratic and colonial elite, have always been watching and copying and tweaking the narrative so it looked like their idea all along. They call it Rococo or Baroque fashion today, praising Marie Antoinette's gowns and corsets like they were divine creations. But Scope News is here to tell you the truth. Because underneath all that brocade and bone-crushing shapewear was a deeper, darker story, one rooted in slavery, mimicry, and the silent theft of black womanhood. Let's take it back to the 1700s. Colonial powers had expanded across the Caribbean, the American South, and parts of Africa. Enslaved African women were paraded, worked, and dehumanized, but their bodies were being watched. Their backsides, full, rounded, natural, were the subject of whispers, ridicule, and then replication. And the very same white women who called them primitive or animalistic? They were going back to their manners, whispering to their seamstresses, asking for just a little more width at the hips, just a bit more fullness in the back. Because their men were staring, and they knew it. In France and England, this turned into panniers, hoop-like cages worn under dresses that made a woman's lower half appear enormous. These weren't casual enhancements. These were extreme. Some were so wide, women had to turn sideways to enter doorways. The richer you were, the bigger your behind looked. Sound familiar? They called it elegance. They called it fashion. But if a black woman's body looked like that naturally, she was mocked, hypersexualized, even punished for it. And if you think this kind of double standard ended with slavery, think again. Let's talk about Sarah Baartman. She was a South African woman forcibly taken to Europe in the early 1800s and paraded in freak shows under the name Hottentot Venus. Europeans couldn't believe how full her hips and buttocks were. She was displayed half-naked in museums, examined by doctors, and even after her death, her genitalia and skeleton were preserved and displayed in Paris until the 1970s. Yet while she was being dehumanized, white women were secretly adjusting their gowns and corsets to get that look. It never stopped. Just like how modern white women now get lip injections, tan their skin, plump their hips, and call it a trend. But it's not a trend. It's theft. It's obsession disguised as innovation. It's BBL culture with a powdered wig on. And that brings us to another chapter they won't teach in film school, Mae West. Born in 1893 and rising to fame in the 1930s, Mae West was praised for her curves, her walk, her voice, everything that made her iconic. But what people forget is that she spent her early career hanging around black jazz clubs and vaudeville theaters. She wasn't just entertained, she was inspired. She watched how black women moved. She listened to the slow drawl of blues singers. She saw the rhythm, the hips, the body language that white America tried to silence. And she studied it. Then she turned it into her brand. Mae West didn't invent that sultry walk. She borrowed it. Her famously slow, smoky voice? That came from nightclubs where black performers weren't even allowed on the main stage. Her tight dresses? Hugged her hips in ways white women weren't supposed to, but black women already did. She was bold, but her boldness had a blueprint, and the blueprint was black. Mae West made curves fashionable for white women. She opened the door for Hollywood to accept hips, sass, and sensuality, as long as it was coming from a white face, just like panniers, just like corsets, just like every single fashion that pretends to be new but is really just repackaged blackness. Fast forward to the 2000s. Suddenly, curvy was back in again. Jennifer Lopez was praised for her shape in ways black women had been punished for. Kim Kardashian built a billion-dollar brand on a surgically enhanced version of a black body. Fashion Nova, Instagram filters, and reality TV all fed the lie that these shapes were new, exotic, desirable, so long as they weren't on actual black women. But the blueprint, the mold? It came from women who were never given credit, just surveillance. There's a reason the term appropriation hits different when you're black. It's not just borrowing, it's displacement. Because black women have been told for centuries that their natural features were ugly, excessive, and low class. Meanwhile, white women put those same features on like costumes, then take them off when it's no longer convenient. Just like they used to wear slave-style head wraps to mimic black women in the antebellum South. Just like they wore hoop earrings, gold teeth, and braided hairstyles for magazine spreads in the 90s, while real black girls got sent home from school for doing the same thing. Just like how they attempt to do bootleg hip-hop, moves on TikTok now for millions of views, while the actual creator black dancers get shadow banned or erased. Remember the renegade dance? It's not about flattery, it's about erasure. It's about how whiteness always wants to consume what it deems black, while distancing itself from the actual people. White women didn't want to be black. They wanted to wear blackness like an accessory, just enough to be seen, just enough to be edgy, never enough to be burdened by the truth. Modern BBL culture is just the continuation of panniers and corsets, only now it comes with anesthesia and a down payment. And the saddest part? It's still being marketed as innovation, as something white women discovered. Scope News is here to pull the veil all the way back. Because the truth is, before there was a Kardashian, before there was a waist trainer, before there was a Fashion Nova, there was an African woman on a plantation being stared at through hatred and desire. And no matter how hard they tried to disguise it, some white women have been chasing that silhouette ever since. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Sarah Baartman, also known as the Hottentot Venus, was exhibited across Europe in the early 1800s due to the size of her buttocks, reinforcing racial stereotypes and fetishization of black women's bodies. Mae West, a white actress, rose to fame in the 1930s for her curvaceous figure, sultry walk, and provocative voice. She frequently visited black jazz clubs in Harlem and Chicago, absorbed the performance styles of black entertainers, and used those influences to build her iconic image. She was one of the first white performers to publicly hire black jazz bands and cast black men as romantic leads, despite cultural backlash. Her style helped shift beauty standards in white society, but erased the black origins of her persona. The exaggerated curves worn by colonial white women in panniers, the performances of Mae West, and today's BBL culture all trace back to black women whose bodies were first ridiculed, then copied, then capitalized on, without acknowledgement. Legal disclaimer. Scope News aims to uncover historical patterns of racial, social, and cultural injustice that have often been whitewashed or erased from mainstream narratives. This essay is intended for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for those sensitive to topics involving racism, slavery, bodily autonomy, and appropriation. While we strive for historical accuracy and cultural integrity, we acknowledge the limitations of available sources and the complexities of interpreting suppressed histories.